don't see how you stop the debasement of the US dollar. I imagine that the only option left for them within the structure is to do what the UK did under Elizabeth, which is to revalue the currency, which would take gold confiscation again, and make everyone trade in the former, the former US dollars, and then what, maybe they say five former US dollars for one of the new ones, so you immediately deflate the money supply.
From 1913 to the dollar in 1913 compared to the dollar today will only buy 4 cents of the dollar then. That is how much inflation we've had over this time period. So some of the other nations around the world, Zimbabwe I think dealt with this. They had hyperinflation. Germany dealt with this during the Great Depression and up till World War II. They had hyperinflation, and so they kept trying to take zeros off of how many paper bills of credit that you need, but really all it kept doing was just making the problem even worse. And so in Germany you hear things that they were having to take wheelbarrows full of German marks to get a loaf of bread, and that they were getting paid daily so that they could buy their supplies before the inflation shot the prices up again.
So. Back home, you literally have a revaluation every few hours. But it's become so dysfunctional, and they've chalked off many zeros as well, so now it's, last I checked, it was $6 trillion to $1 US that he's checking, and you literally, it's so bad that if you buy a house today, a single brick is worth more within a month. It's just, and it's a function also of fractional reserve banking. That's how it works in Zim as well. We call the Reserve Bank David Bob's takeaway, after our president Robert. And I guess that's the biggest thing about fractional reserve, is that its function is to inflate the money supply. Just as much as the function of a internal combustion engine is to run on gasoline or diesel. You cannot reform that. It's literally encoded into it.
Well, actually, there are a couple of things Congress could do in order to curb off, especially inflation, which is, cut spending significantly. 1920s, a large reason why is because the rhetoric at the time by Calvin Coolidge was that because of inflation that happened from World War I, we need to cut spending, reduce the size of government. That was his platform. When that happened, when he was actually able to institute that, that's a large reason why 1920s wasn't a worse depression. So cutting spending, and then you have to raise taxes after you cut the spending in order to pay off debt. You can curb inflation from that, but ultimately what you have to do is you have to start fractional reserving a certain fraction that increases as time goes by to a valuable metal, gold, silver, and today you probably want to augment that with other metals like plutonium and like highly valuable metals that are used in the marketplace. And on top of that, what we were saying like Zimbabwe, one of the reasons why Zimbabwe had such a hard time, one of the reasons Great Britain has a hard time too, is price fixing. When a country starts fixing prices in order to keep, because the market wants to push prices up along with the inflated money as well as wages, you don't see declining goods. So when you start fixing prices, the market gets more and more out of whack with the amount of money you have in it. That's why Zimbabwe went so bad south, is because they fixed prices too low. At least that's the way Keynesians justify, why Zimbabwe did it wrong and why they can do it right and everywhere else.
But it actually made them very rich because by fixing the prices and especially the exchange rates, the ruling parties have been able to get in foreign currencies incredibly inexpensively. When they're really trading, they're trading, 200,000 Zim for a US dollar when it's really trading for 6 trillion, but because they control the banking system. So there's that whole, it really does tend to enrich the elite.
Yeah, I'm liking this conversation. It's a great conversation going on here. I'm with a local group called In the Fed, and we abolishing the Federal Reserve System, and our answer for it is sound money, because I believe gold and silver is the only way. A lot of people say, oh, well, nobody wants to walk around with a bunch of change in their pocket. But if you look at it, if say you're gonna buy a $20,000 vehicle, I mean, you're looking at 20 ounces of gold. I mean, that's nothing. That's just over a pound. And that's the only way. Getting rid of fractional reserve banking, in my opinion, is the only way to stop the establishment from controlling the entire society. Because if you have, for instance, the subprime mortgage crisis, what we saw was a giant spike in housing, and the reason why is because the bankers had the ability to say, okay, well, we're going to loan to a whole bunch of people, even if they have bad credit, or even if they don't have the way to pay on it. And what that created was a false demand in the housing market. And so you saw houses going up so high up in value versus other things in the market, and it was directly because of the bankers knowing that they could create this bubble. And then, for instance, you say you had the last 10 years under, the Bush administration and Clinton. This last bubble, you've seen housing prices go through the roof. People spent the last 10 years in construction, it's from 18 to 28, and now the housing bubble's crashing and everybody in construction, they've been doing it their whole lives, and where are they gonna go from here? And another thing is, if you look at the history of the people who founded the Federal Reserve, they're the ones that fund both sides of World War I, World War II. They funded Hitler, they funded Stalin, Mao, and they funded Bush. They're funding Obama right now. If you look at the policies between Bush and Obama, they're the exact same. I mean, he's increasing the war effort. Anybody who thinks that he's not against our civil liberties needs to look at his voting record. He's for the Patriot Act too. He's just shredding our civil liberties just like George Bush. So I guess in our opinion, I'll keep it short, but I guess, I know you guys already had a presentation and everything, but I guess to keep a long story short is if you're against the war and against people funding both sides of the war, like the radical Muslims right now are being funded by the same people that are funding the radical Christians, or all these other radical factions, and we're going to be continuing in wars until we stop the people funding it.
I think my point was lost a long time ago.
Oh, sorry.
This is a pretty cool history. Anybody know that the Osheim family in Montana? Like very large donators to our MSU state college system. So you can come up 11th, like the duck pond there, like the big archway that they have. That's like the Osheim archway. You go and you read all along the terracotta there, the marble stuff. Did anybody know who Williams Jennings Bryan is?